What's up? What's up, guys? And welcome to another episode of the Powerhouse Mentality Podcast. I am your host. I am Caitlin Kenna. Guys, and we have a great and a special episode coming your way. I have my buddy Michael Vorpahl on. He has his own podcast called the Michael Vorpahl Perspective, and he's a U.S. Marine. The reason why we're getting together to do this show is, you know that we always talk about mindset, mental toughness, discipline, how to get better and grow in your career, in nutrition, in fitness, just to become a better version of yourself. But the reality is that without freedom, without our country, none of this is possible. Because right now we live in one of the best countries in the world. It is the best. Where we have the freedom to work as hard as we possibly can and earn a better life. But there's a lot going on in the world. And there's a lot of things going on in the world that are taking those freedoms away from us. And on the route that we're going now, the freedoms that we enjoyed as kids, our kids won't be able to enjoy those. But we have the power to stand up, and we have the power to do what's right, to fight for our freedoms. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, I want you guys to remember going into this podcast, everything that we're going to talk about is opinion-based with facts, statistics, and data to back it up. I want you to go into this podcast with an open mindset because that's the only way to learn and grow in life. And before we get started, I want to remind you of one thing that a lot of people in this country have forgotten. You may have heard it before. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our prosperity, do ordain and establish the Constitution of the United States. The Bill of Rights protects freedom of speech, freedom of religion, the right to keep and bear arms, the freedom of assembly, and the freedom to petition. It prohibits unreasonable search and seizure, cruel and unusual punishment, and compelled self-incrimination. This document also prohibits Congress from making any law respecting establishment of religion and prohibits the federal government from depriving any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Mask mandates, mandatory vaccines, destroying the livelihood of hardworking Americans. That doesn't sound like fucking freedom. They say it's about health, but if it's truly about health, then why isn't there a mandate to get 30 minutes of movement? Why aren't they shutting down the fast food restaurants that are adding to the obesity epidemic? Why aren't they prohibiting the selling of processed food filled with ingredients that we can't even pronounce? Cardiovascular disease is the number one killer in America. That's nothing new, but if it was about health, then where are the mandates against that? Hey, if you're vaccinated, that's cool. If you're not vaccinated, that's also cool. That's your choice. Because we live in a country where we have the choice. But don't go around shaming others for making a choice. Open your eyes, guys. It's not about health. 2 weeks to stop the spread. Now look at it. Where does it stop? Soon it will be unvaccinated people can't use the same restrooms or the same restaurants as vaccinated people. Oh, wait, we're on that route already. It's time to stand up for our freedom before we lose it all. So let's get into it. All right, guys. So right now we got Michael Vorpahl with us here. Michael, how are you doing today?
I am doing well, Caitlin. Happy to be here. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. You know, I dislodged a rib earlier this week. So if there's any labored breathing going on, just ignore that. But I should be good. you know, we're crazy people. We do what we do when we do fitness. Because I mean, Michael, you're a personal trainer. You're a fitness coach too, right?
Yes, absolutely. So I definitely share of either strains pains and injuries. So I totally get it.
For sure. So we have Michael on the show really to talk about, and I kind of spoke about it in the intro, but kind of what's going on with, choice, freedoms, things that we're kind of slipping a little bit. And Michael is a U.S. Marine. He's been in the Marine for, you said, 13 years, right?
13. Yep.
13. So what got you into the Marines, first of all? Like, how did you make that decision?
Great choice. So, as every young lad is going through his high school years, the absolute formidable years where everyone's supposed to find themselves nowadays, I really had two choices. I knew I wanted to do something to help people. And I don't want to say the cliche serve people or anything like that, but I do have a family lineage of military service. So there was that option that was always exposed to me early on. And it was a viable option at the time. If it wasn't that, I was going to go to school for nursing. I grew up in an economic situation where I did not have the means to pay for school and really set myself up more smartly, if you will, post-graduation from college, i.e. the lovely student debt. And I did not want that for myself. I felt like that would actually set me back, and to be in the circumstance of, divorced household. I grew up in government subsidized housing with my mom. And then my dad had remarried. And, since then, obviously things have gotten better, but I really took a look at the military as a whole. My father was a Marine, my grandfather, uncles, all that. So most people think I was kind of nudged into the Marine Corps when that's not the case. My dad's like, hey, you want to look at it? Go talk to everyone. Do not just make your decision based off of, me, grandpa, uncles, whatever the case is. At the end of the day, I sat down with everyone, and it just felt like the Marines was the best choice, the best fit based off of morals, principles, vision, and the mission that they had in terms of helping people, not only here locally, I say local, but domestically here in the United States, but also the world, that 911 police force. So that's what I wanted to do. And here we are 13 years later. Now that's a whole nother podcast in and of itself, how I led to make it a career. But in a nutshell, that is what led me to the Marine Corps and to present day.
Yeah. I mean, clearly we kind of have the same mission when it comes to just helping people and making this world a better place than we found it. And that's kind of why you're involved with First Form too, because that's their mission, and it kind of falls suit with like the Marines and having leadership and discipline and mental toughness. And, you have your own podcast. And how long have you had your own podcast for?
My own podcast, that's actually relatively recent. So I would say if I were to give it a date, probably 3 to 4 months of really focusing and trying to provide a voice, provide the perspectives, provide the lessons learned, whatever the case is on that platform.
And that just kind of, I'm assuming you started it for the same reason that I did, just kind of get more value out to people and help at least one person, right?
100%. And actually, I'll take it one level further. Selfishly, it might even be more therapeutic than anything.
I can get behind that. Sometimes it just feels good to just talk.
It does.
Out what you're feeling and kind of get it off your chest. And that's kind of where we're going today. So, perfect. Michael, give me a little bit of background on why we're here, right?
Okay, so I know you and I have gotten connected, yes, through First Form, yes, through being in the same group together, and other trainers and advisors, and people just wanted to help one person at a time. But the connection kind of grew just a little bit, right? When I found out there was some affiliation to the DoD, Department of Defense. For you guys who have no idea, we love acronyms. So might throw 3 or 4 letters together and sound cool. But through the DoD with someone who's important to you, and I'm not going to divulge whatever information you haven't already put out there. So, but someone's important to you. So we got that connection with the DoD. And from there, it just kind of snowballed into, a very current event topic. And that is the lovely novel coronavirus 19, right? COVID-19. And most recently, yeah, the Ronas, all right, not the Corona, and one that makes you feel good and warm and fuzzy. So that kind of led to this topic, right? Which I don't know, with the way things are going, I have my own views on it, and I know we can talk about and express how I came up with these views and what led me to coming to the synopsis and the decisions that we had to face and make. But that's really what led us here. I think it was our you and I desire to help just one person, stand up for what was right, stand up for what the believes, and the core values of, not just what it is to be an American in this sense, but also the core values of that special person in your life and what they stand for and the support for them. And, for me personally, my own convictions, my own beliefs and moral obligations that I feel that I need to provide too. So, I hope that answers the question of what kind of led us here and kind of gives your audience and as well as mine just a little more depth of, how did these two crazy wackadoodles get even connected? And now all of a sudden we're about to hear what's going on. So
yes, guys, we are fucking psychopaths, but we're all a little bit crazy, but like to kind of go into the context, guys, what he's talking about is my boyfriend, who I've been with for a pretty long time. He's kind of like a very special person in my life. We live together now. We have a puppy, all that good stuff. You guys know him from social media. He's in the Army, and he was given a choice, as with many, many people in the Army, actually all the people in the Army and all the military and government bodies were given the choice that they have to get a jab, as we'll call it, or they would lose their livelihood. They would lose everything that they'd worked for, and they'd get kicked out of the Army. And it doesn't matter what they've accomplished and how special they are in their positions. Doesn't matter what they've done. They won't get a jab. So whatever. And in my opinion, and I'm sure that a lot of people can agree with me here, is that we live in a country where we are born with these freedoms to be able to choose what we put in our bodies, right? And I know that's like a huge controversial topic, but in my opinion, a vaccine should not determine if you should keep your job that you've worked your ass off for or not. And so it kind of disgusted me to see him in that position where he went so far and tried so long, and at the end of the day, it didn't work out and he had to get it, but it crushed him. Michael was given that same exact decision to make. And I know that you went with something that's going to help your family, right?
Yeah.
But tell me what your thoughts were in coming to make this decision. Share as much as you'd like.
Okay. So this is probably the part where it's just going to be a lot of just spewing, because for those of you guys who obviously your audience, maybe some know who I am and how the hell I think, and some don't. So the way, real quick, guys, the first and foremost, all of this is my own personal take and view and experience. I need to make that clear. By no means is this this is me covering my ass from a legality standpoint of I am not speaking for an organization as a whole, as you will come to find out, because I did not agree with this mandate whatsoever. And like the convictions and internal struggles she just described seeing her boyfriend go through, never seen a grown man cry, and especially someone in our organizations and what we do, it is that dire in a lot of cases, in the sense of how much internal moral convictions and struggles that we go through in order to come to this decision. And some of those of which who I actually just found a finite number for my organization that are absolutely denying it. I didn't know this number before this call. So I get to share that here in a little bit. But with that being said, guys, this is my own personal views. And I just want, I again, sharing and echoing Caitlin's vision for this call and mine too. Just want to give you a different perspective from people who have had to make this choice where, hey, for you guys, it might not be livelihood or not. For you could be, okay, I'll just get subjected to testing. I'll be okay. I don't care. Stick something up my nose, whatever. But that's only if that whole mandate for the civilian work, 100 employees, all that stuff. And that's a whole different topic. But luckily that stayed for you guys. And you don't have to go through that yet. That is held up in the federal court. For us, it is not. So for us, here's what happened. In order to know how I came to this conclusion, you got to understand that the unit I am with now was not the unit I was with when this all started. When this all started, I was with the unit and serving as what's called a training chief. So I fell under a section called operations. So the overall operations and big movements and big exercises and events that go on with the unit. With that being said, you take everything into consideration. I was the Marine that when this first started going down way back when, 2 years ago, over 2 years ago now, right? I was the one collecting all the information, all the guidance, all the memos what are called MAR admins for us, or Marine admins. All right. So those are messages that are put out saying, hey, this is what the new guidance is. These are the new rules. And for those of you who don't know how this works, it'll be like, hey, memo A, B, C, D through double Z in reference to memo A. And then that also goes and references something else. So then it's back to back to back. And you're looking at 10 different memos just trying to piece together what's going on. And I had to do that. Okay. So they put me in a position where I get the puzzle piece, this jigsaw puzzle that is a coronavirus mandate, not mandate yet, excuse me, but policies and what we're going to do, best practices, cleaning, all that crap, guys. So for over a year, I was looking at that every single day. So what that means is every single day I was in my office. I had to go to like 10 different websites and pull all updates from these websites in order to package it together in a nice little box. All right. Put it on some slides, put a little policies and updates and all that stuff with charts and blah, blah, blah. Wrap a little bow on it and say, hey, here you go. And that went to a full bird colonel as our officer in charge. So right away, right out the gate, I had to know what was new, what wasn't, and identify the updates so that he could make a decision in terms of our unit in particular to make sure that we are doing what was required of us. And most people have the argument, well, you're in the DOD, right? You're in the military. Whatever they say goes, right? That is true. If I am on a mission and I have a mission, I'm going to accomplish the mission. I think what's happening is, though, you guys don't realize there's a generation now in these leadership positions that I'm in, and a smarter, younger service member with information at the ready, at their thumbs on the device that runs our life called our phone. And now they, like, senior leadership is not understanding how that's all tying together and how they're not going to question things. So I am part of the generation where the first iPhone came out. So I went from dial-up to now all of a sudden I got 5G 4K video. So with that being said, you have these individuals and where I'm at and how I work of I will collect all this information. And for those of you who can't see this video, this is just a 3-part folder that's about 1.5 inches thick of papers, all from Google, because it could take you right to the link. And Caitlin, you have the links to all this stuff. Mm-hmm. So you can absolutely put it in the description for people to be like, hey, look, no, this is public information. This is public, guys. So don't think it's top super secret squirrel stuff. This is all public. You just got to do the work. I was just forced to do the work because I had to report and provide a product. Okay. So that led me to a lot of questions, though. Now, all of a sudden, I'm put in this position for what at first you're thinking is good. You're like, hey, man, it's a virus. I got it. But me personally, growing up, look, you get a virus, it's a virus. You're going to get it. You're going to get it. You're not. You're going to not. This isn't about whether or not vaccines are effective. And that's the argument, right? Hey, they're effective. You don't want this. No, that's not the issue. That's not the topic. That's not it. Caitlin, you hit it right on the head in the beginning. You said, hey, freedoms. You are born with innate freedoms and ones that are taken for granted. So when you all of a sudden are like, oh, hey, you signed up for you don't realize how ignorant and arrogant you sound by saying, hey, you signed up for this. No, I signed up to perfect, uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Now, part of a type of warfare is biological warfare, which equals viruses and stuff like that. So if this were to come to find out that this actually was purposely leaked and stuff like that and blah, 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 legal mumbo jumbo, look, man, now all of a sudden I am against this 100%. But now you got all the other what is that word? I can't pronounce it right now, but making it more political than it needs to be. And that's the problem. And I think that's what happened, because when you also have the masks, starting out with the masks, 1 mask, no mask, 2 masks, here mask. It's the Dr. Seuss fucking book, right? So it's like, what are we talking about? This makes no sense. And in fact, let's dive into a timeline, okay? So guys, if there's actually an interactive timeline by release, and again, Caitlin has the links, and I'm sure she'll put it in the podcast description or get it out to you guys somehow.
I'll throw it down in the description for you guys to check out so you can follow along with us while you watch.
Perfect. So with that, if you go to that link, it's an interactive timeline, and you can look at the DOD's response, which is the Department of Defense or all the federal government and all other like 4 different timelines you can look at. Looking at the DOD timeline, it was like May 23rd, I think it was. If you go back to May 23rd of this year, okay, this is where it really starts getting weird. Okay, so I'm looking at the powers that be saying 1 mask, 2 mask, no mask, a mask, right? And then I'm like, this doesn't make sense. Back and forth. Follow to science, right? Okay, yeah, let's follow the science. Let's
make it make sense more than anything.
Correct. Let's try and wrap our heads around this thing. So we'll just go back. We're not going to go all the way back, right? We'll go back to May of this year, May 23rd, I think it was. So May 23rd, it comes out with the policy for us, meaning the DOD, about wearing masks. And it says, and the reason I chose this is very specific. If you're vaccinated, you do not have to wear a mask. If you are unvaccinated, you have to wear a mask indoors. I'm like, okay, I could maybe get behind that if there weren't all the studies telling me that masks were ineffective.
Yep.
So this is way back before the mandate even came out. The mandate came out for DOD personnel not until I believe it was September.
I think it was September.
And we'll get to that one. So this is back in May. So this is 4 months, beforehand. Which, okay, vaccinated, not vaccinated, mask, no mask. Okay. Hello, virtue signaling, start. Because what happens is in all these memos, in fact, one dated in 9 August, a little later, okay, there is the word protect, family, protection, readiness. And for us, readiness just means we're 100% ready to go, okay? Mm-hmm. In 1 4-paragraph, 3-sentence paragraphs each, so 12 sentences, there's the word protect, readiness, your family 5 times, separate times. So now we start getting into the whole virtue signaling of the messaging that's going out, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. Saying, hey, protect. In fact, when they start having the head of the DOD medical side of the house, the head honcho, start talking, I swear it was upwards of 20 plus times you heard something along the lines of, it's safe vaccine. The vaccine is safe, over and over. I'm like, guys, why are we cramming this so hard? Why are we doing this? So that raised some other questions. So then starting with that mask in May, fast forward a little bit, then everything starts kind of getting a little weird again. Now you had all these other supplemental health guidances that are getting put out there. And now it's outlining, okay, if you're vaccinated, now it doesn't matter your vaccination status, you will wear a mask inside facilities that require you to wear a mask, DOD facilities, so on base or federal government buildings on base, or it's lovely, hey, reference F. If you go read that reference, it says commanders can make adjustments and exemptions to this policy to say, hey, requiring masks in buildings or situations that they seem fit to protect the force. Mm-hmm. And it goes, okay, so now we're back to more restrictive. Why? Oh, this lovely, it just so happens to follow a Delta variant, in my opinion. In my opinion, the reason you're following the narrative that is what's getting put out there. So with that being said, we get to the whole mask, no mask thing again, vaccinated, unvaccinated. So now, wait, you said vaccine, no mask. I can go back to normal. Well, that's what the public thought too. Not so much. In fact, the public now is in a better position than we are, because if we go against this, we are admin separated, we are separated from the military. So for example, before this mandate came out in September, there was a corporal, a female corporal in the Marine Corps, separated from the Marine Corps by simply not wearing a mask and saying, I will not be getting the vaccine should it be mandated. It was not mandated at the time. That was back in July. So before the mandate even happened, people, and I would presume there's other DoD service members, were getting separated for this exact topic. So now it's like, yo, okay, Spidey sense, let's go up some more. Now this really isn't making any sense. But let's dive into science. How effective is this thing going? Now, this ties into what's the hardcore analytical data. What is it? It's very simple. Go to the website, the DoD response. You'll see the data: vaccination data, hospitalization data, case data, and death data. It's pretty simple. It's straightforward. It's public. It's not anything, again, super secret squirrel. You don't need a username and password. You can just pull it right up. So diving into that, right? If we go ahead and take a look at some of this data, and I need to preface this, I feel like I need to preface this with, my heart goes out to anyone who truly was affected by someone who contracted coronavirus, had extremely adverse effects, and unfortunately lost their life. And now you guys are having to mourn and grief and loss. I 100%.
Yes, because here's the preference that I want to put in, is that we're not saying that coronavirus, COVID-19 isn't real, isn't serious. We're just saying that the flu is serious too. Like, you have to keep these things in mind, that right now it's not really about health anymore. It's just about control and taking away freedoms.
Correct. And thank you for bringing that lens into it, right? So it absolutely, just to echo, it absolutely is real. My whole family got it. My wife had gotten it before she had flown out here with me. Mm-hmm. So like it has,
I've had it as well.
Correct. So everyone here, we all can agree that this thing is real, that it is a thing, and that vaccines are effective. However, it is broached past that. We are past that. So yes, it is about the freedoms. So now, if we're looking at the hardcore data and why it's continued to be pushed, and the reason why this is still a topic for me and for us is because two days, if they don't have the second dose for a DoD service member by 11:59 Sunday night going into Monday, admin separated out.
Yep.
But here,
and now, question for you.
Yeah.
When somebody is separated in this situation, would they be dishonorably discharged?
So from the guidance that I've read, so we're unique, right? The Marine Corps kind of falls underneath the Navy. We're a department of the Navy. So in all that correspondence, I have seen other than honorable. So it's not a dishonorable, it's an other than honorable. And actually in the MAR admin, we can actually read the no joke black and white what the type would be when we get there. So if we want to circle back to exactly what
we can circle right back. Let's get into that data now.
So when looking at, making a decision for these guys, they still have 2 days, right? But this was the same stuff I looked at. And this is what a lot of other service members looked at. So looking at this data, and this is as of 10 November 2021, so 2 days ago. It gives down the vaccination, and you guys can go look this up, click the link, you can read all that. But what's really sticking out to me is, is this really as fatal as they're saying? Like, is the push warranted in other words, right? So here's the DoD-19 cumulative totals for cases, hospitalizations, recovered, and deaths. So in the military, 251,698. Again, this is as of 2 days ago. Cases of coronavirus were contracted in the DoD armed forces and in your service members protecting this country. Out of that 251,698, 2,272 were hospitalized. So a very small fraction were even hospitalized. Okay. Now, unfortunately, this does not break down how many of these cases were vaccinated and not vaccinated. Okay. Right. So it doesn't break that down. So we're just going off of sheer numbers. So again, because the reason is this isn't about vaccine efficiency. This is about what are we really talking about? So out of those 251,698, 24,000 or 247,100 recovered. So that's a pretty good amount that has recovered, right? Now, out of that, like I previously mentioned, 75 deaths. Again, heart-wrenching, but that is part of life at the same time. So it's like, wait, only 75? Yes, only 75 in the sense of fatality of this thing. And I'm going to go down even more into the decision about this and why 75 is a big number. So with that being said, here's the percentage of total deaths across the entire DOD, like total force, meaning total number of people in it, right? For armed service members, for service members. The percentage of deaths based solely from corona was 0.006%.
Yep.
So 1/6 of a 1,000%, right? 6/1,000%. That's it. That's an extremely small number in the sense of percentages, right? So then it's like, wait a second. Okay, well, maybe it's more detrimental for those who actually just contract it. So that number just included total force, not just looking at who contracted it. So if you just contracted it, the percentage of that was 0.03%. So it gets a little more significant. Obviously, you have a smaller pool we're pulling from now, right? But still, 3/100%.
And behind that, how do we know that it's truly a death caused by COVID itself and not caused by different health markers that COVID could have accentuated? For example, 80% of people who died of COVID-19 or reportedly died of COVID-19 were obese or overweight.
Correct.
So
to kind of piggyback there, I don't have the data that's readily available that you can go to the CDC website for the civilian populace, right? And the information that way to know if they were obese either. So guys, again, on my end and the DOD end, Caitlin brings up an amazing point, because just because we're talking DOD, these same principles can apply to these situations as well. And here's why. So it also gives the DOD civilian employees data, as well as any contractors and dependents. Okay. So let's look at the civilian DOD employees. 71,520 contracted corona. So that's how many cases were reported. 2,046 were hospitalized. So about the same number of military service members and civilian employees were hospitalized, which is interesting given the number of cases is smaller. Which means what? That means percentage-wise, civilian employees are going to have a higher hospitalization rate than service members, than those who recovered. But here's the kicker. 366 deaths. So let's break down that percentage quick. So what does that mean? Well, 366 deaths out of 71,520 cases of civilian DOD civilian employees is 0.5%. That's 0.5%. So 0.5% of everyone who is a DOD civilian employee, statistically speaking, could die from coronavirus. Okay. Why is that so significant? It's still under 0.5%. Yeah, you're right. But that 0.5% is 17 times more than that of a DOD service member. So 0.5% is 17 times more likely to die than the 0.03% that of a service member. Why is that important? What contributes to that? Exactly what Caitlin just said. The typical DOD civilian is not in the same state of health, fitness, wellness, lifestyle than the DOD service member. So it's no surprise to me that the numbers are saying what they're saying. So even within the DOD, in my eyes, in my opinion, the case is pretty clear. The survivability rate, since we're looking at numbers, of total force survivability is 99.994%, and the survivability of someone who has contracted coronavirus for a DoD service member, okay, is 99.97%, which means 99.97% of any service member with these statistics who contract this virus is going to survive. Now, with the DoD civilians, that is where the concern would herein lie. But really, is it really a concern? Because their survivability of cases contracted is 99.5%, so 99.5%. Either way, you have over a 99.5% survivability chance.
Yeah. And the fact that we're giving, the people who are fighting for our freedoms and who volunteer to fight for the freedoms that, like Michael said in the beginning, that we take advantage of, that we're making them make this decision of whether they're going to lose their job or not based on a virus that is 99.5% survival rate at least, right?
Correct.
It's interesting.
Correct. So now if you tie it back into, okay, that also goes into the survivability rate that's going across this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, it's really, in fact, I think we're like 0.2% maybe, or 0.25% as a DoD service member, more likely to survive than the 99.7% that is that, like the civilian.
You guys are healthy. You're in shape. You take care of your health.
And that's because of the standards that we have. Like,
exactly.
to me, this seems pretty common sense. We have physical standards, we have weight standards, we have lifestyle standards. We have to maintain cleanliness in rooms, in homes and stuff. Like, we're subject to inspections. Okay. So with that being said, it's like, it's no wonder why our survivability is higher, but it really, all this just to say and get to the question, what led to the decision? What led to the choice to get the jab, as you put it, or to get the vaccine? Again, for me, it wasn't due to me fearing my life. It wasn't due to being like, oh, I really need this. Because you cannot get the flu shot and just be fine. And I'm not comparing, like, don't even get it twisted, guys. You got to keep your mind open conceptually here. You have to think conceptually, freedoms, okay? Whatever you want to do. And I know I signed a dotted line as well. However, I truly believe I also have a moral obligation to question things that don't make sense. And in fact, as a leader, we are taught to do such things. And it's the fact that people keep rolling over and not bringing up, not having discussions and shying away from them out of fear of getting reprimanded, that this continues to go down the way it goes. Now, would bringing this up change the way it is today? Probably not. But you know what? At least they can understand that, if you're disconnected, here's a wake-up call. Your choices, we ain't about it. We ain't about being forced into this coerced position, okay? And for those of you who have no idea what the true definition of coercion is, I love words and words have meaning. So coercion, the practice of persuading someone to do something by using force or threats. That is coercion.
That's exactly what this is.
By putting something to me, black and white, saying, if you do this, this will happen. That is a form of coercion, not necessarily consequences. So with that being said, you really don't have an option here. It's either lose your benefits, and get admin separated out of a career that you thought you could be prideful in service of your country. You either give that up, give the stability of a paycheck, give stability of benefits, give the stability of education. You give that up. You give up the sense of making a difference in someone's life. You give up the opportunity to go lay down your life for this country that is the United States, that you wanted to do. Okay, let me be clear. We're not talking I willingly want to go give up my life, but I will willingly do so that you can go practice the freedoms that you have taken for granted. This is what this choice in this mandate has forced us to evaluate. For me, 13 years. I either, in my opinion, say, hey, well, it's been a good 13 years. I'm glad I got 4 deployments in. I'm glad I made my mark on the world and help. And I'm glad I impacted whoever I could impact. But you know what? Now I'm at a moral crossroads within myself, religiously, mentally, emotionally. Like, that is where we're at with all that information that we just unpacked for you guys. That all went into my decision. Now, unfortunately, here's the problem. Not everyone knows that this information is either A, there, or B, they're just too scared to speak up about it.
Yeah. And that's the biggest thing. Most people either aren't doing the research that it takes to actually understand what's going on. A lot of people say, hey, look at the science, but they have no idea what the science actually says. Or they're honestly afraid. And I think that's the majority of people. They're afraid to stand up because they're afraid of being reprimanded. And that's horrible to think.
Well, 100%. I can't tell you, I have some junior Marines under me, and they were like, what do I do? And all I can tell them is, here's the black and white. Here's the policy. Here's the message. Here's the mandate. Pretty simple. If you don't do this, this is going to happen. If you do this, then all is good. That is the choice. What choice is that? In what
it's not much of a choice.
No, there's not. And in what other world is your livelihood being put on? Now, here's the bigger picture, or being put on the line. Bigger picture. It's not just the DOD, but everyone's too timid to speak up in the DOD because they think they're going to get in trouble. It's like, no, not at all. I'm just spitting what is out there. This is already out there. They put it out there, in fact. So with that being said, this is just my interpretation and opinion on it. With that being said, other places where they're really pushing these mandates. Yes, the over 100 employee thing on the civilian side is being held up, right? Which is awesome. Mm-hmm. That's good. What about the police force, though?
Yep.
What about your firefighters, EMTs, first responders, educators?
Yep. People who literally give their lives and sacrifice their lives, or give their lives to your children every day, are being forced to make this decision.
Correct. And for those of you out there being like, these old liberal teachers and this, that, and the other, like, look, that's you again, keep it. Everyone's typically a good human. There are those bad apples and bad examples and all that stuff out there, but the principle still applies. Education, molding minds of the next generation. I just had I just had a conversation, a coaching call last night with one of my clients, and they were frustrated with how their school was going. And I brought up this point. I'm like, you are right to be frustrated, and what you're battling, I truly believe, is what educators now and societal pressures they are succumbing to is pushing it down through the schools. Now, this ties into a different topic, but guys, it all ties in together, in my opinion, because now it's a systematic way to enforce what they want to see enforced. Okay. So I told her, though, what I told her is, your child is exposed to this situation 8 hours a day. Your child is exposed to this more than they are the principals in your own home. And that is scary when you really think about it. So if you are concerned, you need to be more involved in your child's life. And that's another thing that I'm passionate about. So you have to be involved. That's the key word. Involved. Whether that's, hey, daughter, son, how's your day? Whether that's in the DOD, hey, Marine, sailor, soldier, whatever, airman, how you doing? How are you? So it kind of ties into, well, what can we do about it? All we can do about it is talk about it. All we can do about it is make enough noise, not in a bad way, but just talk about it. Like they call it scuttlebutt, right? Like that underground, that talk amongst each other. Get the conversations going. Don't shy away from them. Don't shy away from the conversation. As a leader, as an influencer, if you're a civilian or whatever, or leader in the civilian world too, have the conversations. And in fact, I took a big leap of faith. And Caitlin, I don't know, I'm a man of faith, but like, I was like, yo, what do you want me to do? Because I felt so convicted about this. I'm like, how do I get this out there? And then all of a sudden it's like, yo, let's do a podcast. And I'm like, all right, tight. You got it, bro.
Everything happens for a reason.
That's it. So I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm going to do it. And this is only skimming the surface, right?
Yeah.
But what's happening is the same thing that happened to everyone else. It's happened to us. The virtue signaling, protect you, protect your family, protect the forest, protect your brothers and sisters. That's the same thing that's happening here. Okay. Now here's the other aspect. The DOD is primarily made up of, in terms of active duty service members and reserves, the biggest demographic is 18 to 24 years old. So with that being said, how many of them are really going to have the intestinal fortitude to just not follow an order?
Yep. Most of them are too afraid. They're just going to do what they're told.
Yeah.
Most of them are just going to fall in line. And again, it goes back to most of the people, if you're agreeing with what we're saying and you're like, yeah, that's true. Like, most people think the way that you think, but the media is reflecting that people don't, because most people are afraid to speak about it. And like Michael was saying, it's all about just getting involved, right? Getting involved in people's lives around you and getting involved in the community to make it a better place and to kind of fight this.
Yeah. And so it's like, all right, cool. You guys are speaking all this, but guys, that's what led to a lot of our decisions. Okay. Mm-hmm. So with that being said, it's like, how do you move forward? I decided after going through, and I still feel disgusted. Like, mm-hmm. I get sick to my stomach thinking about how, in my opinion, I succumbed to something I did not believe in and I did not believe I wanted.
Yeah.
And how do you move forward? What do you do? Well, you have a conversation now. Unfortunately, we are in a position where you have to proverbially fight your battles within the parameters in which you can fight them. And that's where I think most people don't understand. Most people don't understand that, okay, there are things that you can do to bring up your discontent in the fact that it's not just you. It's not so much rioting. It's not violence. It's not any of that. And specifically in the DOD, I'm going to talk about it like this. I am going to talk more about things from an educated, objective, factual standpoint, even though I have the vaccine. Because I wasn't going to throw 13 years down the drain. I wasn't going to take away the support that is for my wife and daughter. I wasn't going to take away the opportunity for me to have an impact on the future generation and to embark on them a way to critically think about situations, not just this one, but just think in general, because that's a whole societal thing that we can get into another time. People can't think for themselves anymore. And that's the problem. And that's why this has gone so far as it has now. Unfortunately, the only way to move forward is, I think, through in my opinion, again, a coerced position we're in. You have to get the vaccine in order to fight within the system if you want to attempt to implement change. If you don't, then you're perfectly fine. Don't get the vaccine, separate and transition out. Like, those are really your two choices, in my opinion. That's really what it comes down to. Do you want to stick around and do your best to provide the best you can or an opportunity to change things in the future? Or are you not? That's really what it boils down to in my eyes and in my opinion.
Yeah. And that's kind of where, the night that my boyfriend, what happened was he re-enlisted for 6 years, got a text later in the day saying, hey, formation tomorrow at 8. If you don't have your vaccine passport, you're out. And he had to make that decision right then and there. It was like 5:30 in the evening. And we were like, hey, well, let's look and see if there's anywhere giving vaccines. And if there was, we were going to go with it. And there was. And he was upset, but in that moment he said, it's not the time to stop. It's not the time to fight now. We need good people in the military who are willing to stand up and who have the right mindset to make an impact. And like you said, change the future, right? And just make this world a better place. And that's the mission.
And the way he put it, I love that, because that's exactly right. Unfortunately, here's what I'll say, kind of not COVID related, but overall for the DoD guys that listen to this. Okay. There are many times throughout my career that I thought about getting out. I thought about transitioning out. Obviously, this is very new, right? My reenlistment was still submitted in June. I'm waiting to hear back. So I'm looking to finish this out and do 20. That concept of the good ones always get out because of decisions that are made is exactly, in my opinion, the reason why we might not be in the best position that we absolutely could be. So for you guys, for any service member who's listening or veteran who knows of a service member who's struggling with a moral decision of just in general staying in or getting out based off of this disgruntled unhappiness, frustrations that they're experiencing, please share that message with them. This one right here, the one that her boyfriend shared, it applies to every type of scenario. If all the good ones who actually give a shit get out due to frustrations, then that is why we're in a position we're in now, because the good ones don't stick around enough to actually persevere to implement change.
Yep.
It seems like a daunting task. I understand that. But if you truly believe you are good and that you are better than the alternative, then why wouldn't you feel convicted to stay around and fight? Proverbially, okay? Sad I got to say that. But why wouldn't you stick around? I understand. I don't agree with this either. I don't. It sucks. I get frustrated with my chain of commands at times, the various ones that I've been a part of. I almost didn't reenlist the first time because of it.
Yep. And that's kind of where my boyfriend's at. He wasn't sure. He didn't even think he was going to reenlist, but then he ended up making the decision to do it. And then, he's literally like counting down the days until my 6 years is up because of all the frustrations that they're putting them through. But again, if you have a mission to change and create an impact on the world, you have to stand up and you have to be strong. And I know it's scary and I know it's hard, but we need people who are willing to speak up.
And that's exactly it. So, I mean, that's what led to my decision. That's what led, and it's a lot to try and wrap up in the last hour here. All right. So there's a lot more there's many more nuances and little things that happen, but the big picture is, look, if you do not agree with this, you are not alone. You aren't. And there are those in leadership positions, chances are right next to you right now or so close to you, that share the same frustrations. No one's just talking about it. So no, if you feel like you're alone, or if you feel like you were forced into a choice, you have more that feel the same way than you could ever possibly imagine. I get messages quite a bit. I get comments quite a bit about that same thing. All right. So with that being said, if you need anything whatsoever, you can always reach out, and I would more than be happy, even if it's just, yeah, bro, that sucks. I'm right there with you. You know what I mean? So with that, keep fighting the good fight for all you service members out there. And same with the civilians, but this is really focused on the DoD, right? So all you guys fight the good fight. All you guys know you're not alone. All you guys know the good ones need to stick around. And in no way, shape, or form am I advocating for this whole mandate. But there are times where you have to fight within the parameters in which that are set forth with us. If you take anything from this call, or excuse me, from this podcast, from this episode, from what we're saying, take that lesson. Those two major points. Good ones need to stick around. I challenge you to do so and be there for your soldiers, airmen, Marines, sailors, whoever it is. Be there for them who are hurting and struggling just like you are. Be that difference and do it within the parameters that we have, because that's the only way you can eventually implement change. So
guys, I think that's a great way to finish off. I don't think we can really beat that. I mean, guys, I hope that you took a lot away from this episode. It's a valuable one that I hope that you continue to come back from. And the biggest thing is that if you found value and if you know that this is right, please share this podcast. Share it so that one person who's struggling can hear this and so that we can spread this message. But Michael, thank you for sharing everything that you shared. And thank you for being on the podcast today. I appreciate you. And let's go out and fight.
I'm totally game. Caitlin, thank you so much. And, hey, for real, guys, I'm just going to echo her. Share the show. If you don't, here's some virtual signaling for you. If you don't, you suck. That's all I'm going to say. Because, hey, you got someone here, and this is a shout out to Caitlin. She gave me a platform. So she's providing you guys with resources in a way to hear a different perspective and a different side in a light that you will never get otherwise. So if you don't share the show, shame on you. That's all I'm going to say. But Caitlin, thank you so much for having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we'll definitely talk soon.
All right, man.